Hey guys, it's me again, Orcslayer. What if? Where I last left off is, let's see, a checklist as usual. Bell got washed, was dragged along to the capital, took part into a makeshift gladiatorial battle between him and some of the best fighters. He got a special axe from the Empress, and he fought a giant snake. He can only be referred to as the Warhound from other people with the slave collars on. And anything else? No, nothing comes to mind. Unless you count that thing when he fought the giant snake. Now he and his people are running from a horde of ghouls after he just finished making eye contact with it and going, "Oh crap!" And so as they're rushing forward, some of the slaves are not in the cart. I'll say some of them are like, if I remember correctly, I said it was more like a cage. Some of them are just riding it. Like, it's just like those, prison carriages that they would probably haul people in. So as they're, like, in that, Bell and another guy are riding up top. He's like, Master Warhound, what are we gonna do? He's like, as they're like going, he's like talking to her. He's like, what are we gonna do? Those things are right on our tail. It's like, I don't know, Warhound, give me time to think. So as they're rushing, as they like start getting to catch up, Bell looks back. He's like, oh. And he like looks down. He's like, does everyone have silver? As he shouts this out, and some of them like, as they're looking around, they're like, hey, there's this, as they like toss him his special axe, because I'll say it actually has, so it was made out of silver. He's like, alright, you two, take my two other, I'll do this, as he like climbs up on top of the thing, sort of just like getting ready and getting stable. There's no like trees or anything, so he ain't gonna get knocked off. He's like, alright, let's go! Go, go, go! So as he's continuously, he like just like gets the axe and is at ready. And right now they have, I believe, it's, let's see, 17? Yep, 17 people at the moment. There's the 9 people that was following the woman. Then there's her, so that's 10. And then there's Bell's forces. Wait. Yeah, 17. Which there's Bell's 6 guys along with him, so that makes up 17. So as Bell and them continue like to forge forward, like, how long can the horses run for? We don't know, sir. We just know they can run. And it's just like, what are you gonna do, Warhound? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'll just wait until they attack. Then out of nowhere, a giant, like a ghoul, a decently, like a much smaller one that will be referred to as a lesser ghoul. It comes, as he's like saying on the top, it comes swinging down. Bell grabs the axe, swings it, cuts right through it as it goes off. He's like, oh, you watch out! They may come from the trees! As this happens, 2 of the woman's guys are instantly taken out. The third one leaping at her, ready to sink its claws in. I'll say she carries a silver weapon just in case. And it's like a spear tip. Like a spear with a silver tip. I don't know, I'm yawning. She immediately takes it out and manages to impale it. As it like drops down, they're like, dang it, how long till the bridge? And I'll say they like had to go over quite a few obstacles, like some bridges, some rocks and such. But they mainly had, this will be the thing, it's like, oh, we should reach there in 30 minutes. Like, oh. So as Bell, some of the monsters get inside Bell's carriage, and they actually tear, like, his warriors end up, like, pushing it out, just simply, like, these things are quite small, but they're stronger than the average pit fighters, but these are Bell's pit fighters. They literally essentially just go like, this is our place, find your own, and just kick it out, causing it to tumble. I'll say that these guys are quite big. They're not as big as Bell. Like, Bell's 6'10". These guys are just like, I don't know, 6 foot. Which is still very big, considering a lot of people are around 5, only 5'6" to 5'8". So these guys are bigger than the average people, but yeah. So as they continue on, Bell and his teams like fend the monsters off from this carriage. Bell covering the top, keeping them from crashing in, as well as protecting the driver. The women losing several of her men on the way of getting to the point. At one point, a flying ghoul. It's just like a lesser ghoul, but it has wings and a tail that will try to stab people with, instead of just the 2 arms. They're very similar to the vampires from... If anyone's seen the movie called Priest, they're very similar to those vampires. But they won't be like them. They'll just be monsters and such, not like a hive mind or whatever. So as they're charging forward, Bell takes his axe and again just swipes it out of the air. He actually ends up catching it like a baseball bat, and it gets stuck on as he's like, "Oh, get off!" As it actually goes crazy for a second trying to bite him, he grabs the neck, lifts it up, and just snaps it. That won't keep it dead, but it'll stop it for a little bit, because the ghouls, like I said, are only vulnerable to silver, but I'll say they're also vulnerable to fire, because if it was just silver, that'd just be kind of dumb. Because I gotta give archers ways of actually killing these things. So as he snaps its neck and throws it off, he's like, "Dang it! Hey!" And as some of the riders up front say, "Hey, there it is! There's a bridge!" As that guy calls out, 2 of those ghouls instantly drop down and snatch the dude up as he gets carried away, "Oh my god!" And as he's dropped into the rushing tide of monsters, there's quite a lot. So as they are running across the thing, Bell's forces and the horse actually running is running alongside. Bell's like, "Oh, I see." He's knocks down on it, "Speed up!" As he drops down on the horse, he's like, "Go, go, go!" He's like, "Lady, move faster." She's like, "Me and the guys are trying to go as fast as we can." And I'll say by the end of it, there's about... So there was 17. I'll say there's about 11 left. So as they get to the thing, Bell's rushing across... As they're rushing across this, and I'll say it can support the weight of carriages and such, but can still be cut down in the movies. You know what I'm doing. So, as Bell and them rush across, Bell starts hacking at it. And it's a pretty long bridge, so he got there first and just started chopping at the actual things keeping it up. First couple of chops, he takes down the one end, it starts to sag. As the carriage gets over, and then finally the one lady, he actually starts chopping at it. He's like, "Come on, come on." As a big brute almost gets to him, he puts all his force and cuts it down, finally dropping them into a river. The entire horde did not get across. It was about 50 monsters were getting across the bridge. Bell's like, "Don't stop, they still got air units." But the air units aren't following, they're just sitting up in the air. So as Bell and them are rushing back to the base, they're like, "What was that?" She's like, "I don't know, never seen something like that before. We must consult Gary at Slave Master Gary." I agree, Warhound. "Come on, you, move forward." So as they're all riding, so as they're all riding towards and at this point it turns day, so all the monsters skulk very quickly back to their caves. It's not that they'll burn in sunlight, it's just that The sunlight doesn't feel good to them. It's very, not painful. It's similar to Gollum, that they just prefer the darkness and such. And they'll just be hampered by it. So as they continue forward, they get to the thing. And when the Lord's like waiting, they're like, sir, and I'll say Bell and her have gotten a few injuries. Bell didn't just like endlessly swing him off. His armor got kind of, and even at one point, one of those flying ones dropped down and like gave him like a giant slash mark with its talons on its back all across some of his armor. After then, he like pretty much cut it in half. So they got a few cuts and bruises as Bell and her like approach the thing. Bell with his armor and such, as they both sort of address Gary. And I'll say at this point, like I said, it's been 4 months, the Empress decided to come and visit. Because she said she wanted to talk to Gary about Bell some more, and where he got some, and that see if she could find some fine slaves like Bell. As they get there, like the lady bows down like, Empress, and he's like, oh, we got a problem. Bell's like, oh, we got a problem. As Gary's like, I'm speaking with the Empress. Forgive me, but this is a bigger issue than you talking with the Empress. And as like the lady's starting to freak out, as Gary's like, why are you insolent? And the Empress is like, hold it. What could be so important? A wave of ghouls, a horde of ghouls had attacked the town and completely destroyed them. Their horde is massive. I count, from what I could tell from that party from that thing they sent after us, I count at least a few thousand, maybe, because there's roughly like maybe a couple hundred chasing after us, and they weren't the big troops, they were small ghouls, as he would refer to them as lesser ghouls. So the Empress is like, this has happened before in our history. Perhaps another leader of them have showed up. And he questions how is that possible. She explains that they're much like, similar to lions. Or if that there's the biggest one who rules over them. There's many, many different packs of them. There's lesser ghouls that stay in hordes that follow the biggest, a normal ghoul. Then there's those alpha or beta ghouls that wander alone. Then there's the alpha ghouls, as she speaks of them, or the ones that are referred to as Lord ghouls. And they are what happens when a beta ghoul takes over, runs into several more that's also leading its own little herd of lesser ghouls and kills each of their leaders. It gains strength with every victory, and after enough victories it becomes an alpha ghoul. From then on, the lesser ghouls start evolving into beta ghouls as well as flying ghouls, and as far as I know, that's all of them. Lesser ghouls, beta ghouls, flying ghouls, and alpha ghouls. So, if you say they never sent a single one of a beta ghoul after you, he's like, I only saw like a massive ghoul. Looks like he was commanding them from atop the mountain. Couldn't tell you how many there were. Too busy running for my life. So she's like, I see. Gary, I would recommend you gather your troops and fortify your position. If they truly do have it would best be play it on the safe side, because ghouls can replenish their numbers rather quickly when food is present. So as it speaks and such, as she speaks, the Empress, she's like, well, see you later, Warhound. And she's like, at ease, or whatever she would say, stop kneeling. And she's like, yes, ma'am. And as Gary's like, We'll talk about your insolence later, but for now, she's right. We need to gather people, resources, and some silver to fight these things back. As Gary goes to, like, talk with some of his men and such to gather forces, Belle's like, I'm gonna go back to the pits. And he's like, very well, I'll call on you when I have need of you. As Belle goes downstairs and talks with some of the trainers, he's like, yeah, we got attacked by some, like a horde of ghouls. Bastards nearly swarmed us, but we managed to get out before it was sunset. Margaret, which I'll say is the name of the woman, Margaret isn't very happy. Oh, yes. And your wife Integra says hello. He's like, how is she? She's like, she seems fine. She's also said your sisters and mother are fine. Ugh, dang it. So as you continue forward, Belle and them sorta, just, Belle goes like, well, I'm gonna go sleep somewhere. And just like pulls out a chair and just sleeps there. Because he and his soldiers, or he and the other people, or other gladiators, just decided to go and rest. Because they had been riding all night. And Belle got his injuries looked to and such, so, yeah. As Belle's just sleeping and such, like, Gary comes down to the thing with a sort of squad of his guards and such. As they come down, he kicks Belle's thing. He's like, wake up. He's like, what? What do you want, Gary? He's like, listen, I've sent out some reports, and it seems it's way worse than you actually thought. He's like, how could it be worse than I thought? I said maybe they could have 1,000. How much worse is 1,000? How much worse are we talking about? He's like, as he pulls him over, about 5,000, maybe 6. He's like, how did you even get this information? Well, I sent my people into the hills, and they came across several villages that were gone around sunset as well. These are on the fringes, you see. And when they reported back, they had lost pretty much everybody except for 1 or 2 people, and had also had to cut the bridges to stop the monsters from coming after them. They each said, and these were roughly around the same time, what you said. Aside from the giant ghoul at the top of the hill, there were just several small beta ghouls, as he says. And he's like, what are we even gonna do? He's like, well, we need to assemble an army, or assemble a counterattack first, or a force so we can go nest by nest, destroying each one. But this doesn't sound it will end unless we completely destroy that alpha ghoul. Now, problem is, we're gonna have to grab the troops together, arm them with silver weaponry, and or have a fire mage or so come with. Cause, if you remember what the Empress said, or if you remember anything about ghouls, it's, silver and fire. Silver and fire. And it's best to attack them during the day, so that way they'll be weakened, or be less likely to come out of their cave. So, he's like, so, what are we doing? So, he says, well, Margaret is going to gather some forces, and you will be rallying the slaves. He's like, the gladiators. He's like, what? Well, technically speaking, you're the most veteran troops here, and each of you has fought against a ghoul once or twice, especially some of your pupils. So, go on. As, like, he's like, you're the top one, you make the announcement. So, as he retreats after, and this was in a secluded spot, Gary returns to gathering, sorry, pulling out the silver weapons from his armory, trying to find some person who knows how to use fire magic, as well as trying to gather as much oil and such to be able to make fire on weapons. Like how you dip a sword in oil then light it on fire, that sort of thing. Or silver. So he's pulling his hairs out of this, and as Bell grabs the troops, the gladiators here, he's like, "This will be assembly. All gladiators are meant to come." So as they all get into the giant pit that's there. I'll say there's roughly 500 gladiators that are there, and they're all pretty big people. Quite a lot of them have the whole chain wrapped around the arm thing. These aren't his personal students, but you gotta remember the trainers were also Bell's students at one point. And I'll say this is a month later, so they're constantly keeping eyes out, and they've said that the ghouls have moved across from the river. So as they've gotten everything set up, and this will be the part where Bell gives a speech, is before that month, he's like, "No, you listen up. We got a bit of a problem. Gary, owner, has a problem. But it's also a problem for us, so listen up." And as he says, "There's been several ghoul sightings, and I was sent out on a patrol to look at a thing where several squads of Gary's men had been unable to report back. When we got there was a massive horde when it became night, and a massive horde of ghouls started charging at us. They have what we would call an alpha ghoul, so the leader of the pack. So what we will be doing is that we will be being put together as troops to fight against these. Right now, the second command to Gary, Margaret, will be gathering forces to equip her soldiers and such with. I've been told she has roughly about 7,000, 6,000, and they ask how many ghouls do they have. I've been told roughly maybe to be estimated as high as 5,000, maybe a lot less, maybe a lot more, or maybe a bit more. We do not entirely know." So as them start whispering, "So what are we gonna do?" "Well, we're gonna be fighting, lads, or we're gonna be fighting men. We'll actually get to partake in an actual battle instead of these gladiatorial pits, as Gary would have said. So, as I would urge you all to be ready, just in case we either get attacked by horrifying monsters, or we are sent out to battle horrifying monsters on their own turf. I hope you all will recognize this, and we will be going out as soon as we said." As Bell goes through the rest of the thing, there are no gladiatorial fights at all. They're all being cancelled until a ghoul situation can be resolved. As Integra and his Rose and Quartz speak to Bell about this, so Warhound, as Bell's sisters still try to refer him as Bell, and then they get shocked. They're like, "Warhound, what are you gonna do?" "Well, when the time comes, they'll probably sick us on the whole ghoul invasion. Then hopefully we'll win. If not, you guys are pretty screwed." As they're like, "Be serious." "That's the sad part, I am being serious. I have no idea how calculated ghouls can be, but from what I can say, they're more intelligent than the ones I had fought, and that isn't saying much. Instead of sending his flyers after us, he let us go. Why? He could be wanting us to and as well he like explains his concerns. They don't know. Then Bell is finally called forward to a room where several of Gary's, I guess, second commands are at. They're like, what's the deal with the Warhound being here? He's like, he will be leading the Warhounds. No, not the Warhounds, but he'll be leading the Gladiators. And they're asking, well, why don't we just lead them? Because they don't respect you. They hate you. They respect him and will follow his orders. Like, I'm not even that good. I haven't even ever led a commanding role. They're like, well, you're gonna learn. Now, to continue forward, explain the thing again. So, we will be attacking the first one on the far right. Hopefully they'll be, from what we heard, they have probably the lowest amount of numbers from those who have returned. And so we'll be marching forth with our 6,000. No, not 6,000. We'll be sending roughly 100 across. 1,000 across the bridges that connect the land. Bell, you'll be going over with at least 250 of your soldiers. As he says, he's like sitting there quietly, still thinking. And they're like, so as we continue forward, Gary's like, why so quiet, Bell? He's like, it doesn't make sense. They're like, what doesn't make sense? Why did it let us go? And as she talks about, what do you mean let us go? They couldn't get across the river. He's like, but that's where you're wrong. They had flyers. The flying ghouls could have easily swarmed us. From what I could tell, they had plenty enough to swarm your men. And they could have possibly knocked me off my horse. Not kill me, but knocked me off if they really wanted to. But why didn't they? There's always at least one person, one or two people left alive to come and deliver the information. Why? And some are saying, you can't be thinking these ghouls are actually intelligent. Why wouldn't it? These alpha ghouls are supposed to be 10 times better than the other ghouls. That could also mean intelligence. So as he's running it through his head, he's running through the idea through his head. This thing could be a lot worse or a lot easier than he's thinking. Because I know they're about, from what I saw, it's about 3 times the size of a beta. The lesser ghouls sort of acted very smart. They came out of the woods. That shows that they either have predatory instincts or they were actually planted there above time, above head. Because if they could catch up with us that easily, they still let us go. Why? So, you think it could be pulling more of us in for what? He's like, this thing is truly intelligent. It could be wanting to cripple this side of the Empire. Because then it could if it is truly intelligent, like I said, it could possibly set up its own defenses and end up launching attacks from here. And slowly but surely weakening the Empire to a point that could just possibly take over completely. So let's play on the side of caution. I say we gather more troops. Instead of only gathering as much as one person on this side, we should talk with some of the other lords who are also threatened by this. As Bell proposes this idea, several of them start, so this is just preposterous, and you should know your place, slave. Gary has actually been quiet at this point, actually thinking. He's like, Warhound has a point. This does tend to being a trap. I prefer to be prepared, more overly prepared than not prepared enough. Because one, I get made fun of being overly cautious. The other one, I'm lying in a pit, face down, lying in mud, face down, with my entrails leaking out. So, let's go. So, Bell, what do you prefer? Well, the Lord right here, I know you two are from what I've heard, you're on somewhat decent terms. And since that you two don't outright hate each other, so you can bring your concerns to him. He's like, good point. Margaret, go and discuss with Lord, I don't know, their name I can think of? No, not really. Tell me this Lord's name. As they're like, well, I'll call him Lord, this is taking a long time to decide. I know, Lord Wolfheart. There we go. Lord Wolfheart. Lord Wolfheart, that we have some current concerns about a horde of ghouls that are over the side of this river, and bring needs attention to him. This is at least a week's worth of journey, and as this is in this span of time, Gary, and to continue forward, continue gathering oil, making arrows, making spears, and trying to still find several fire wizards or whatever. As he speaks about Bell, you are to gather anybody, any slave that looks like he could hold a weapon properly, and you are to technically conscript them. As Bell says this, anybody? He's like, yes, anybody. Even women. And he's like, alright. But no children, I'll need them if all the adults die. He's like, I understand that quite. So as Bell goes around having his warriors go around the public looking for slaves, with special orders that says Lord Gary needs these forces to be conscripted into his personal defense force to go and drive off the ghoul scourge. None of them can really argue against this. So any who try, Gary very quickly silences them. As this goes on, they all still are disgruntled, while actually taking a lot of people to be used in this conscripted army. So as they're essentially trained, Bell has all his warriors train them in the basic arts of holding a wall, stabbing, slashing, and making sure you don't die. 101. And they're put through very harsh training, to the point of a lot of them actually bulk up pretty quickly. Even the women bulk up pretty quickly. As their numbers are raised from 500 to 1,500, in that week alone, since they were grabbing from everywhere, they were able to rapidly grow that small contingent of gladiators. And they are a mixed bag. Some of them, they have archers, spearmen, berserkers like Deku, and etc. So as they're all formed up, Bell even gets them organized into special little thing. There's squads of archers, squads of shieldmen, and squads of berserkers, squads of berserkers. So as they're all put up, but they all do this. Oh, dang it, stop going. Stop. Ugh. They all continue on with their lives. As Bell and them go forward, as Bell and them continue forward, the lady comes back after a week, after discussing with the Lord, and sort of sending messages back and forth. Through Bird, they often get it right. So, Lord Wolfheart has been convinced and is supplying his troops and gladiators as well. His troops number roughly, actually trained troops, roughly at 6,000, with a supporting unit of 1,000 gladiators. Lord Wolfheart has much more channels for grabbing gladiators. So, as Bell and they both meet on the field, Gary and Wolfheart, they reapproach, and they're both leading their forces in this. As Gary and Lord Wolfheart Lord Wolfheart approaches at the battle table with Gary, and Gary bringing his commanders. Bell was just okay with sitting out. As they bring up their forces, he's like, I got 6,000 men and 1,000 gladiators ready to be launched. He's like, good. I got 6,000. Well, I wouldn't say 6,000, because then I'll say they've actually said that there's about. Well, it's just unknown. There's just like roughly several thousand. So I'll say instead of 3,000 men, 6,000 men, he has roughly 3,000 men. And Lord Wolfheart is also bringing another 3,000 with the 1,000 gladiators. So they have roughly, with combined force, and I said there's probably 6,000 ghouls, 5,000 and up, they have roughly 7,500 warriors ready to be deployed. And as Bell's standing there in the corner, he's like, what's the deal with the slave? Gary's like, yes, he will be commanding the gladiatorial forces, since they're the only ones he respects. Some of the gladiators may take this chance to stab people they have grown to have a peculiar hatred for. He's like, are they even organized, or are they just some rabble? As, Bell, takes commander outside and Bell yells some orders. They aren't perfect. Shields, berserkers, archers. They don't have any special tactics, it's just very standard. Berserker Company 1, Berserker Company 1, Berserker Company 2. So, to outline the entire amount of forces they have, I'll say they have about, let's see, I said there was 1,500. They have about 250 archers, 250 berserkers. That'll make a huge difference. The rest are consistent of normal swordsmen and spearmen who will form lines. Bell's like, I don't know much, but I do know the basics of a commanding strategy. As this is said, they discuss their tactics. Bell and his forces will be pushing along the far left. One of the is said to be probably one of the easiest hives to take down. But they're sending some of their strongest units because they've heard reports of a massive ghoul being sighted in the area. So they may have to take on more. As all the forces have crossed the bridge and they've set up their camps and their defenses, they go over the plans one more time. Bell is to send up his entire, I guess best way to say is legion or division of soldiers is to rush up there. So as Bell is marching forward, he's actually wearing his full armor with his dragon skin or drake skin drenched over his one of his shoulders, or just hanging on the front of his thing. One guy of you asked, will he be like Vulcan? And the answer is kinda no. Because it's instead of being a giant skull on his shoulder, it's like a drake skin lopped over. It's a drake skin. So as he's marching up with his men, who are also there, his specially engraved armor, as they're marching forward, just is shining, and his cape or cloak is flowing in the wind, with several of his forces taking several following things as well. They see the chains, the special, not specially engraved, but armor that they themselves have engraved with animal skins over them. For instance, a few of them have bear skins, or tiger skins, lion skins, or even a ghoul skin for one of them. These ones are the ones who have taken on truly difficult challenges. Like these tigers and lions, these are like his biggest troops that have taken on these things and lived to tell the tale. They are known as the warhounds. The warhounds. Well, they're just known as the warhounds as well. Bell is referred to as the warhound master, or the warhound's master. In a way, it's like a very weird way that some of them refer to them at. He's known as by others as the first warhound, but later on, like since he's gotten more followings, adopting things he's pretty much set in place, he's known as the warhound's master. Gary sort of just refers to him as the first warhound. Others refer to them as the warhound's disciples and such. So you see what I mean. The warhound's berserkers and such. So that's what they've all been kind of referred to as. So as they're marching up this hill, we're marching into position. I guess the warhound's berserkers, or the warhound's guard, and the warhound's master, which is Bell, are marching forward. Bell using his double axes. These ones are made out of silver. Most of the warriors that are with them have like silver, sort of like a silver coating on it to work against them. But for those who can't have those, they just have oil and fire. Bell is actually supported by like a fire wizard or two. Since Wolfheart and Gary have pulled their forces together, they were able to get a lot more wizards. Wolfheart's leading the charge up one of the things with mounted cavalry, which Gary trying to point out that might not be a good thing since they're going uphill, but the Wolfheart says, I heard from after these mountains are pretty open plains. They could be set up shop in there. And there's like signals and such, like birds are sent out for every progress. Bell sends out his last bird saying, area found, moving, area found, continuing on with assignment. So as they all move in, it's grown dark right now. Bell's forces, like the archers, get like inside Bell's like inner circle, while the ones with the sword and shields are in the like surrounding them. So that way the archers and such can do their job without having to worry to being killed. And they also have like groups of them, like soldiers that have been labeled as support, carrying extra arrows, carrying the oil, and other things. The wizards are also in the direct center. Bell is marking at the front head of the army with his warhounds, or with the warhounds. As Bell and them all stand there, they're just waiting. Bell's like, keep an eye out. They could swarm us at any second. For almost nothing to happen. Like Bell, they've been standing there for 20 minutes, and it's been grown dark. So as Bell's looking up, he's like, does anyone else see anything? He yells he's telling the wizards, send some light up. Let's see if they're hiding anywhere on the cliffs. So as Bell and his warriors, he's like, get ready. They could be rushing at us this very second. So as some of the soldiers, not soldiers, or the gladiators are kind of nervous, some of them are like, Bell's like, easy man. If they see fear, they'll take advantage of it. Be ready. As they saying that, and as the light goes up, they don't see anything. Then out of nowhere, just like a giant horrific scream is heard. And Bell's like, here they come, lads! Let's give them a good thrashing! And as they're charging, as the monsters are charging, Bell lets out his war cry. Hear our howl! Know our fury! As they all go charging in, as they all repeat the "Here are hell, no our fury," as they all go to rush in. The berserkers like clashing into the front lines. The front lines are primarily made up of beta ghouls. As Bell and his forces come to immediately claim several kills amongst them, while other of the warhounds are tackled and killed. As Bell finishes off his, he actually ends up getting into a grappling match with one, and this is a pretty big one. Bell instantly just snaps its arm, cuts it off, and then slices off its head. His warriors are pushing forward, and the warhounds are holding their ground against such massive numbers. Then after the wizards throw a couple of fireballs, Bell's forces immediately start letting out their fire arrows, and the forces they actually took off some of the forces and had them charge into the front, spears at the ready, impaling several beta ghouls along with the lesser ghouls. Bell's forces are crashing through. Bell himself, his weapons are already covered. His hands are covered, and he actually, at one point, he has some special things that have been silver tipped, like his boots. And they're engraved with metal, and Bell goes and stomps on a lesser ghoul's head, making a nice little squash sound. He's like, "Slaughter them! Show these ghouls what the warhounds are made of!" As they continue forward, just bunch of screaming and roaring from each side is heard. Bell cleaves his way through the horde, single-handedly in fact, tossing off any lesser ghoul that dares jump on him. He cleaves several of them in two, crushing many of them and slicing them apart. Slowly but surely, the warhounds are pushing up as well, covering Bell. As they slaughter their way through, many of their weapons are the same as Bell. Several with just giant single axes, and many of them carrying dual axes. With a few of them even carrying halberds and hammers. They're all just crashing through these ghouls' front lines and pretty much make quick work of the front lines. Then come in the flying ghouls. Bell's forces get slaughtered. Not Bell's forces, but the flying ghouls, they start picking off not the warhounds. The warhounds, every time one of them comes by, the warhound will grab one of them and slam him into the ground, then quickly bringing down his or her weapons. And yes, there are female warhounds. Bell picks the best fighters are picked by Bell's personal pupils to be assigned to the warhounds. So with this fight going on, I'll say there's probably roughly 3,000 ghouls here. Yeah. That gives you an idea of what's happening with the other ones. Most of them have been engaged around the same time. Some of them are doing quite well. Some of them are doing much, much worse. And that's a long, much worse list. So, as not Bell finishes, but several warhounds take down these medium-sized ghouls, lesser ghouls, and flying ghouls, the fire wizards end up casting several fireballs onto the building, start causing fires. Give Bell and the forces more light. As that happens, a massive roar is heard, and several armored ghouls are seen with some weird people on top of them. As they see this, they see these things riding these massive ghouls, or are on top of this massive ghoul, and they just see that they look human. As Bell looks at this, as another medium-sized ghoul comes and tries to jump on him, he bends, as it lunges for him, he goes under it, and then just tosses it, immediately rushing forward and splitting the head in two. When he turns back, these forces, these people, I won't say they were actually on giant ghouls. They were just standing on the hill. As Bell sees them, they vanish immediately. Vanish right after. As Bell's forces clean up the rest of the ghouls lying in wait, Bell says, "Well done, men! We showed these little ones how we do it!" As that is said, Bell's like, "Come now, we retreat for now. Grab the wounded and the dead. We'll give them their memories what they've been honored." Bell marched in with 1,500 and left with only about 1,400 after taking down, around 3,000 ghouls, around the half mark where about 500 were, not 500, about 900 were killed. Some of them started running off, being called back, and the rest were continuing the attack against Bell's forces. So I say they didn't wipe out 3,000, they wiped about 1,600, with Bell losing about 1,500, about 200 forces. A few of those include the Warhounds, which if I remember correctly, were made up of the 250 and such. 250, so I'll say about 25 Warhounds went down, with the rest being made up of primarily spearmen and swordsmen that were taken down by the medium-sized ghouls and being sworn by lesser ghouls. Considering their odds, they did rather well, and they managed to even drive off a force, destroying a town and denying the enemy the access to the town in a way. So there's nowhere to hide, just in case more forces have to come here and check it out. And that will be the end of that. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a nice day, nice night, nice life.